Welcome to another episode here of the Team Playbook. Today we got on Alison Alston from Lodestone Real Estate. Allison, thanks for joining us. I guess we'll just start with a little introduction. Tell us a little about yourself, a little about your background, and what you do.
Thanks for having me, Carl. I appreciate it. So I run Lodestone Real Estate. I've been in charge of the team since 2019. We are currently in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, and we are fast expanding from there. And I also run a company called Finca Living. So one of our big pain points is just kind of the slow drip of inventory into the Charlotte market in particular. So I partnered with a steel company out of Atlanta, and we are introducing some new steel-based products to help improve affordability and just get some more inventory online and bring people some more options.
That's great. I want to ask you a little bit more about that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's been one of the biggest points that a lot of people have talked about is inventory, especially in highly desirable areas. It's difficult. So, with that, what sort of led you to that approach, right? The partners that you found to work to, I guess, create more inventory.
I have been a realtor here in Charlotte since 2017. I may have had slightly more than this at one point, but not an exaggeration to say the most inventory I've ever had is 3 months supply, which is insane. So we have been in a seller's market my entire career in Charlotte. And while as a homeowner and someone who has invested in fix and flip houses, that is phenomenal, it's just not sustainable. One of the, I'm going to say, pros and cons of the Carolinas, I'm sure everyone's familiar with all of the relocation stats. We have not dipped below 100 people per day since I got here. And so it's an astronomical amount of growth. We just don't have the housing supply to keep up with that. So that has kind of started to drive up the prices. You know, Charlotte was insanely affordable when me and my family moved here. It's still very affordable compared to many of the other large cities in the country, but it is starting to teeter towards that unaffordable side. Um, One of the biggest things that I've also been seeing over the years is just the quality of construction. My dad was a contractor, fifth generation, and him and my mom fixed and flipped properties. They created vacation rentals, longer term rentals. They kind of exposed me and my sister to everything. And one of the things that my dad always really prided himself on was creating a tremendous end product. The amount of attention to detail that he put throughout the homes was just something that always stuck with me throughout the years. And it's something that I'm sure not all builders love working with me as a realtor because I pay very close attention to what's going on kind of
Yeah,
behind the scenes and throughout the entire process. And I have very high expectations, especially, you're paying a lot of money. This is the largest investment people are going to make in their lives, most likely. You want it to be something that's going to last. And
hmm,
I've just seen more and more, especially post COVID years, just the quality of the construction is just not there.
yeah,
So that's kind of what led me on this journey. The partnership was a very, I'm going to say, the universe bringing the right people together at the right time kind of thing. I actually was in talks with a company out of Australia who was focusing on the 55 plus generation and trying to create some new insurance products that would allow us to mobilize them and get them into a new property without the costs of a traditional mortgage program, because many of
hmm,
them, their equity's tied up in the house and they don't
yep,
have the cash flow to qualify. And we have a
absolutely.
huge portion of our population here in Charlotte that fits that criteria. And so I was like, okay, if we can start mobilizing this population and get them into homes that work for them, more of that single story, that kind of thing, smaller footprint, now it frees up a ton of inventory for my clients that are those kind of second time, we're going to call them the mover uppers. They're starting to have families, they need more space, right? And that inventory just doesn't exist here. And so, long story short, the US's insurance programs are state by state, and so a national program wasn't really going to quite work here. But through those relationships, ended up getting introduced to a phenomenal company called Metal in Atlanta, and they produce light gauge recycled aluminum. And they created a machine that literally we can take blueprints, scan them in, and then print the steel framing package out. And the benefits for this are tremendous because one, speed of creation and assembly takes about 2 to 3 days to assemble an entire 2,500 square foot home versus 2.5 to 3 weeks. So
Like the
that's
whole frame?
the whole
Wow.
frame. Yeah,
Wow.
it's incredible. So we've sped up the timeline, right? So now our production, we
Hmm.
can produce more, so we bring more inventory online. We've produced something that, from a builder standpoint, there's no more warranty walks. There's no nail pops. There's no shifting, right? The steel is a solid grid. It's not moving. So
Hmm.
you've got a really great product. And then from the consumer standpoint, you've got a solid product that foundationally you don't have to worry about it, right? Nobody can oopsies and cut a notch in a joist they're not supposed to because that's not
Yeah.
happening with steel, right?
Yeah.
But also from an immediate cost savings to them, your insurance, the homeowner's insurance, is going to be significantly less because from a fire standpoint, the steel is fire rated up to 1,800 degrees.
Yeah.
So not kind of your average thing. And especially with what's been going on lately with some of the environmental cycles and the storms and all, that's a huge, huge impact.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Wow. So introducing basically this new technology within the sector that I feel like has kind of been pretty stagnant for a long time. It's sort of been the same. It hasn't really
Yes, so
evolved for a while.
stagnant.
Yeah.
Yes. And not really new technology. It's been around forever. We've just only used it in commercial. And I'm like, why?
Yeah. Exactly. What
Right?
economies of scale, right? Introducing it
Yeah.
to this area that it hasn't been used because you saw the thing for a while, the big the ship container houses or whatever for a while.
Yes.
Like I was like, no one knew like thought that's like okay, like no one's gonna move into a ship container. I'm sorry.
Yes. Yes.
And it not to be political or what, but I know that that same argument that you're making about the 55 plus is what they're doing in Florida about with their whole property taxes. That's one of their justifications to make it easier for that group to move, right? So they can afford what they're moving to, and they don't have to because they're. I think one of the main reasons that their argument is if they make that move, buy that new place, and their taxes jack up, and it just doesn't make sense for them, right?
Yeah.
To open up that inventory. Um, but here, obviously, there's also the other side is adding inventory, right? Which that's fantastic. So with that, I mean, what's some of the difficulties that you've run into? How are you working to overcome them? I mean, I imagine there's a lot, especially starting something new like that. Um,
Yes.
and what are you working, or how are you working to overcome them? I guess what haven't you? You're still trying to figure out. I guess I don't know. What's it been like?
I think, my parents will tell you that from day one, I have been a very stubborn human being. I've never heard the word no in my life. So my colleagues just laugh. They don't even bother. They're just like, she's going to work her way around this. So we've had objections. Many of them are, well, I need to train my subs to handle this. No, you don't. It's literally the same exact process. In fact, it's actually easier because everything is pre-cut, pre-drilled, pre-dimpled, and pre-stamped. So if you can read the instructions on a Lego set, you can figure out how to put this thing together, right? I
Yeah.
mean, actually, I would argue this is easier than Legos. I've seen some of my nephews set lately, and I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Aunt Allie's really busy right now. She's gonna go in the other room.
Yeah.
But so that's one of the big objections. Another objection is, oh, we have the special tools. You don't. It's a slightly different drill bit. It's nothing special. It just goes into your screw gun the same way any other one does, right? So it's like some of that stuff. I think one of the things that we were up against right away that we just decided not to fight that battle with right now, because of the steel, it technically doesn't have to be spaced 16 inches off center like wood. it can be a
Hmm.
much wider stance. But one of the things early on, we're like, do we want to go up against building code and try and get special approval in every area? Not so
Hmm.
much right now. Let's just get this into the common space and get people comfortable with it, and then
Hmm.
we'll tackle that bridge because then that cuts down the costs and the time even further. Yeah. So it keeps going, but that's one of the battles we're like, we'll table that for right now. Um, I think it's it's just like with anything, right? When something's new and there's change involved, humans don't like change. The majority of them don't, right? And so it's getting them comfortable with it. So we have open access to the production facility in Atlanta. We're opening some other areas across the country. And so we're allowing people to come in and see how it works, right? We have videos out there on YouTube now that we're like, hey, here is exactly how this thing works. See it, right? I have samples now at my house that I'll bring around to the different builders and like, here, touch it, right? See how it works. Play with it. Do what you want. So we've learned to be a little bit more, I'm going to say, on the back end to have more transparency there so that people can really touch it, feel it, see the process, and get more comfortable with it. Overall, it's been interesting because the public has been very receptive to it.
Hmm.
We launched Think a Living as kind of this separate outspace of it to introduce accessory dwelling units because we know there's a big drive for those right now, and it creates a lot of affordability or just an extended space for people that can't afford to do that move right now. Um, and so that has been interesting because the public is super excited about this. And we have a lot of activity happening on that end. The part where we're seeing more objections is from the builders themselves. And so
Hmm.
that's where we're like, all right, let's just open up the back end, come take a look, play with it, do what you want, right?
Hmm.
Let's see how it goes. And so since we started to do that, we've got more and more people coming online. We've got a huge development out in Iowa that we're talking with right now. We've got another one in Utah. Like the West Coast is all on board with this.
Hmm.
They are very excited. The Southeast also excited. We got to work on the Northeast, but we'll get
I would
there.
imagine Northeast would
Um,
be a little bit more tricky with something like that.
yeah,
I mean, with steel, I mean, I would imagine it would be harder to adopt up here. I'm in the Detroit metro area, so yeah, I would think that, yeah, I mean, I think having your house built out of steel is like, you know, that's great, especially, it's going to be more durable. I imagine maintenance is a lot easier, simpler. I
so
mean,
much easier.
yeah, yeah, but
Yeah.
I would think up here we're worried about like rust. We're in the Rust Belt. I
So
don't know how that would impact it
it
so
is
much. I mean,
stainless steel. There is no
okay, stainless
rusty
steel. All
on
right,
it. Yep.
all right,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Everything
but
has coatings on it to make sure. Yeah.
and I would imagine
Trust me.
that would
That
be the
was
case.
one of my first questions when I was
Yeah,
like, well, but like what about? And they're like, no, not
yeah,
a thing. I'm like, okay, you know.
yeah, and I mean,
So
and you feel like you just have a lot of legacy places that it's just no, this is how we do it. This
yes,
is what we
right.
do.
That is a lot of it. I mean, I think for me, it's kind of right, increasing options, increasing quality options for people across all price points. I think it's also changing a lot of the workforce, right? We have a massive shortage in trades. And until
Yeah.
we change our trajectory on that, which isn't happening anytime soon, right, that's going to continue to be an issue. And so if you create products that you don't need this specialized labor force for, all of a sudden that opens up the pipeline, right?
Hmm.
And that creates a big difference. And so it's like that's huge for me. The other thing is the average truss package that is stick built, that's over 800 pounds. Out of the steel, it's 200 pounds. So that drastically impacts
Yeah.
who can work on these products, right? Because you're not going to have the strength really for 800 pounds, but most people can manage, a few of them for 200 pounds.
Yeah. That's I didn't even think of that, and that's true. Um, I mean, what's the biggest successes you've seen in this so far? Like, where have you said this has mostly come from commercial recently, and this is where it's been, but now introducing it to homes, real estate like this, primary homes. where have you, I guess, where have you seen the biggest growth in that area with that? The biggest successes that you've had so far?
Biggest thing is, again, going back to the individual homeowners. We have a lot of people who are very eager to take one of the ADUs and put it in their backyard. A lot of the counties, Charlotte, Atlanta region, out in California in particular, there's a lot of counties that have approved special grants to be able to help homeowners afford putting these into their homes, in order for them to be used for affordable housing. And so, like where I live in Charlotte, our county released, just before the end of the year, up to $80,000 in forgivable grant for people who are going to put one of these in their backyard and be able to go ahead and lease it out to, someone who meets the qualifications for the area median income that they set each year. And that's tremendous because now you've created housing for a population that's in dire need of housing. You've also created a source of income. And we all know everyone's feeling really tight and strapped right now. So
Hmm.
it's kind of a win win. And the government's going to pay for a good chunk of the expense of that. So in areas like this, that's where we've seen the most interest so far. I would say the other biggest population that we were surprised by the demand. We thought it would be a lot more in that people wanting, a office in the backyard kind of thing, right? That space to go to that they could use as a rental from time to time. But ultimately, it was just expanding their footprint of their existing property. In fact, what we've had a lot of inquiries about is either for straight up income property or for housing parents or in laws.
Yeah.
They want them closer to home. They want that one story living. They want that compact space, but either or doesn't have the funds to be able to transition them into a single family property of their own, or they don't want that because they really want them close, but mom and dad might still want their independence and have their
Yeah.
own space, even if it's in the backyard.
I feel like
Um,
I've seen an uptick of that more recently too, right?
yes,
Where more the family wants to come more together, but of course everyone wants their own space. Like I remember
yes,
writing a loan here recently. It was a cash out refinance, and it was so they could build this massive ADU, so both sets of parents could move in, one here and one over there. And I
yes.
feel like that's coming more and more common, and that definitely solves.
It does, and I don't know why I'm so surprised by it. I mean, we joke, we call them the baby chasers here. But
Yeah.
I mean, in Charlotte, we have so many people that we used to call them the halfbacks because they went down to Florida, then they came back to the Carolinas, right? So they
Yeah.
came halfway back.
Yeah.
But now we started noticing they're coming because this is where their kids are. This is where their grandkids are. And
Hmm.
so they want to be around those babies and they want to have that connection, but they still want their space. I think it's interesting in many ways. I think today's, senior generation is so much more independent than any of the prior generations. And so while they want to be engaged and involved, they want it to be on their own terms. And they're
Hmm.
like, no, 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 I'm not moving in. This is not permanent babysitting, right? I've already
Yeah.
lived that life. And I think also for them, it's a way of still having a space to come home to, but they
Yeah.
can go out and travel and be out on the road and not have to worry about their space while they're gone, right? Because the kids
Yeah.
are literally right there to take care of it.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are planning, I have some clients I'm working with right now and they're having this whole conversation in front of me on how, well, we typically go away for about 3 months of the year. We don't like to be here even the winter. And the kids are like, great, we're going to be renting this out while you're gone.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, well, let's talk about what that looks like. And so, I think it's really interesting to see people getting much more creative about these things, and realizing ways in which they can finance both ends, of the economic spectrum from, the younger family to the older without it needing to be a withdrawal from the retirement account, which is the thing that I love from a financial standpoint.
Yeah. 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 I mean, that, I feel like it's something that can solve a lot of problems. It can solve a lot of different things for a lot of different people. Just
Yes,
having that 80, again, whether it's an income or just to have the family, like you said, but it's very variable, right? It's
it
flexible how you
is.
want it, how you'd actually want to use that.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is just there aren't many options out there, right? As you said,
Hmm.
not much has changed
Yeah.
structurally, right? I mean, we get different floor plans, right? We went from
Yeah.
completely closed off to completely open, then we realized that was a terrible life decision. Let's go
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
So it's like we've
I don't have a
shifted
space
some of that
anymore.
stuff, right? It's like, oh, okay. But so it's like we've shifted some of those things, and sure, there have been different products over the years that have been introduced, whether it's hardy board and different things.
Hmm.
But overwhelmingly, the structural foundation is exactly the same as it was hundreds of years ago.
Hmm.
It really hasn't changed.
Hmm. Well, that's great. I want to pivot here a little bit and go
Hmm.
to the other side of your business now.
Yes.
All right. So I mean, you've already in your introduction, you basically how you said you pivoted from private schools
Yes.
to real estate. So what led to that transition? And I mean, clearly, it's been a little over a decade now. It seems like you've been in the sort of
Not even. Yeah.
yeah,
We're just
but you've
on.
clearly
Yeah.
found a lot of success. So what
Yeah.
did that transition look like? What led to it? And how did you find so much early success?
So the transition, what did it look like? It was terrifying. I questioned myself every step of the way that first year. I had a really, really solid paying job. I had risen up through the ranks to the head in fundraising pretty quickly, and it was great until I was bored. It's the same cycle year after year of fundraising, and you throw a different theme on an event. The campaign, you're fundraising for a different product or fund or something, but it's the same life cycle overwhelmingly. And so I was very blessed. I met a gentleman who's now since retired, but was the president of the foundation at UVA. Brilliant, brilliant man, Gene Shutt. And we had gotten to know each other over a few years, and they had an opening in the development office at UVA, and he very, very generously offered me to come down. And I met with a team, and they had an incredible team there. Um, and everything about it felt great, except for the fact that I had just gotten married about 6 months prior. And I was sitting there chatting over lunch about what my schedule would look like. And he was like, now, I understand you're a newlywed. And this is going to be a big move because my husband and I were in Connecticut at the time. And so we'd be moving down to Virginia. And he was like, we'll keep you local to start off with so that you can spend some more time at home and just kind of get settled into the area and the community and everything. And I was like, okay. And I was going to be out on the road 5, 6 days a week. And I remember sitting down with my husband to dinner that night, and I said to him, I don't think I can do this anymore. I think I'm done. I said, I can't imagine doing the same thing that I'm doing for the next 40 years. Yeah, I don't want to take this next step up and then not have a life with you. And he was thankfully like, yeah, I don't want that either. It would have been a little awkward if he was like, no, it's fine,
Yeah.
babe, go travel.
Yeah.
But so yeah, so we just both kind of came to that conclusion. And then he looked at me and he's like, what do you think you are going to do? And I was like, I have honestly no idea. And so I declined the job and we went back home to Connecticut. And I quickly set about looking at my network and figuring out, who does something that they really seem happy at and enjoy. And I reached out to one of my past parents who had been in commercial real estate and then transitioned to residential. And I asked if I could sit down with him and shadow him. And he was like, sure, absolutely. And so we spent some time together. And I was like, I really, really think I would enjoy this. And I think I'd be pretty good at it. Um, and so my husband and I sat down. So we got married in November of 2015. I resigned from my job at the end of January in 2016, so just a few months later. We did long weekends I came up with a short list of 10 places that I would live. I went to Vanderbilt, loved it, and always wanted to be back down south. I hate cold weather, cannot stand it. And so he was on board. And so we went and visited cities. Charlotte was the third place we came to, and both just said, this feels like home. So fast forward, and he put in for a transfer with his job, and we were supposed to move here in April. So I was like, well, hiring season for the schools is February. I want to resign ahead of time, give them an opportunity, do this the
Mhm.
right way. We didn't end up relocating here until November. We learned very quickly I am not good at staying home. I started up multiple side gig businesses just trying to keep my sanity until we
Yeah.
could finally transition. And back then, you couldn't do real estate online.
Mhm.
So that was certainly very different. But so got down here and I interviewed with Marissa Boyle, who's the original owner of Lodestone, and it just felt like a great connection. Um, and so, yeah, so November, we finally got down here. And then by the following February, I was licensed and on the team. And that first year, it was a grind. How did I find success? I did everything and anything possible. I would host 3 or 4 open houses a weekend. I went door knocking every week. I reached out to every flipper in the city I could get my hands on because I was like, hey, I know what it takes to do this. I watched my parents do this. I've
Mhm.
physically participated in these projects. I'm going to come with a whole level of experience that most agents don't have. So let me help you. Let me show you what's going to give you the best return, right? Let's not guess at this. And so developed a little bit of an early partnership on that end. And then I also started working on relocation. We relocated with my husband's job. It was not a very pleasant experience. Um, and we were largely on our own, and I was like, this can be better. And so I worked to create a program that would be better for our clients. And it's something that we have now put in place for all of our clients, regardless if it's a relocation or not. Um, but that took the most time to build up. I used to go and do pop buys every month to the different HR and relocation departments to say, hi, it's me, the crazy lady again. You still haven't sent me any business, and I know you really want to. And here's something fun, right? Like, let me bring you some joy. And it was just silly, inexpensive stuff I could put together off of Pinterest. Um, but eventually, about 6 months in, I got my first lead from them. And now, Atrium Health is one of our big clients that we love working with. And they still send us leads, and it's been almost 10 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'd say, how did I get it? I worked my rear end off. I put in a lot of hours, and I refused to quit. And I refused to fail. My first paycheck was $500. I sold a $23,000 house for
Yeah.
someone who had inherited that I never met. And I remember looking at that check and going home to my husband and saying, I think I made a terrible mistake. And he started laughing. He was like, it's just the first one. There will be plenty more. Just keep at it. And thankfully I did.
Well, that's great. Well, with where your team is now, right? It seems like you have what, 6, 7, 8 agents somewhere right around there. What's the growth been like? Obviously, in the Charlotte area, it's a growing area. I mean, Relo, that seems like a great sort of niche to hit in a expanding area like that.
Yeah.
So what's that growth looked like? How is, what trends are you seeing in your area and how you guys are, approaching your business?
Yeah. So as far as the team growth, we've stayed largely stable until this year. We've just started onboarding new members this year. I'm very fortunate. My agents come and they stay on the team. But it's the exact reason why I pivoted the team model about 2 years ago. I forced them to take a step into more of a leadership role. After they've been on the team for 2 years, I'm like, don't keep running my business, run your own, right? That's why you got into
Hmm.
this. So we train them to be able to step off on their own. Some of them truly step off and go and create their own brands and do their own thing. And some of them, most of them really, end up continuing to use the Lodestone brand and they're still part of the team, but they start bringing on their own agents and training and taking care of them. And so that's been really incredible for me to watch. So that's kind of our growth trajectory as far as the immediate area. And then we are looking to expand, especially with the ADU sales coming online.
Hmm.
And then from a market trajectory and what's happening, it's been really interesting. I would say the last year is the first time in my career that I've seen the market be so segmented and very specific. And we're very fortunate it's played into how I built the team out exactly. One of my agents laughed the other day and said, "You knew this was going to happen, didn't you?" And I said, "I'd love to lie to you and say that I did, and I was that smart, but I did not." When I took over, one of the things I changed is my agents are only allowed to work in certain areas of the city. They have to prove to me that they are a area expert. They need to know everything that's going on there. Otherwise, they're doing a disservice to the clients. And so each of us handles a different region of the city. So nobody's running all over doing the whole thing at once. And it creates more camaraderie than competition because you're not now trying to fight for the same leads. But it's been fascinating to watch how, for the most part, anything inside the 485 highway loop, it's still flying. It's moving very quickly. I have a house that just went up last week, Thursday, around the corner from me. They called for highest and best by 3 p.m. on Friday. Multiple offers. This is a $1.8 million house just gone.
Hmm.
And then if you step outside of the 485 loop, it is a completely different story. And there are neighborhoods where things are taking 90 plus days to sell. They're going below market value. Well, shouldn't say that. I'm like, market value is the price that
Yeah,
someone's willing
yeah,
to pay
market
for it.
value is, yeah, exactly,
Yes.
yeah,
But I'm like, they are going below what the anticipated market value was, we
yeah.
shall say. And so there's areas where we are seeing some price corrections for the first time in a long time. And then there's areas where things are still getting bid up. So it's really, really important to know exactly what the market is that you're serving and being able to speak to that particular segment's days on market pricing, right? Setting appropriate expectations.
What do you think right now is like the most, like the biggest pain point that you and your agents deal with right now? In the market that we're dealing with, whether it's the business as a whole, the model, like what you guys are dealing with right now.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing continues to be a misconception of what a realtor is or should be. We pride ourselves on being a guide, right? We are there to be a mentor, to educate people. I think a lot of it comes from my original background in education, but I want to take people, sit them down, and be like, here's all of your opportunities, right? You may choose the one that's right for you, but I want to make sure you know all of the opportunities that exist to you, not just the one that's best for me. I get a lot of, I'll say, playful criticism from other agents that, oh, she's not really a listing agent. She doesn't do that many listings. And they're not wrong. However, it's because I coach my clients not to sell their homes necessarily. Like,
Hmm.
I think the word investor became dirty a while ago, and it shouldn't be. I'm like, if you look at financial literacy and building wealth, real estate is a tremendous way to do it. And if you look at the wealthiest people in this country, they all own multiple parcels of real estate.
Hmm.
And so why not start there? And so one of the things we do is we sit down with our sellers and we look at the financials and we say, hey, let's talk to the lender, right? Let's bring them into this conversation. Do you have a financial advisor we can bring in? What are your short-term immediate needs? And what are your long-term goals? And does selling this house actually help you meet those? Or do we need to hold this and turn this into a rental and turn this into some additional income, right? What can we do to offset these things? And so
Especially if they have
that's,
those 2% rates.
yes, right? And that's a big thing with the ADUs, right? Like we realized one of the biggest issues is people don't want to refinance out of those beautiful rates, and I don't blame them.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to either, right?
Yeah.
So what do? Let's create a program that you can actually get a loan for an ADU now. Why that wasn't a thing before, don't know. Makes no sense to me. I'm like, it's a physical structure. It's got heating and plumbing and electricity just like your house. So why is this different, right? This makes no
What sort
sense.
of lending do you guys see for those ADUs? Outside of a traditional sort of cash out or HELOCs or, things like that. Like, do you have a financing product set up for it? Or is it going to be tied to just that, the parcel, the land? Like, I guess what's the approach?
So remember earlier when I said I don't take no for an answer?
Yeah.
So I've been very blessed. Myself and my team have had a tremendous sales volume over the last, you know, 10 years. And I went to all of my favorite lenders and said, "Hi, I'm doing this thing. I'd love you to be a part of it. Can you make this thing for me?" And eventually somebody came back and said yes. And so they are partnered up with a private investment company. And so they've set aside money and they're holding those loans in house. And effectively, what they're doing is structuring it very similarly to I'm going to say like almost like a bridge loan esque, in that instead of just looking at the value of the ADU, they're also looking at the value of the land and the value of a primary structure if one exists there. And
Okay.
so they're incorporating all of that to make the approval happen rather than just fixating on one piece of it. And so they've created this loan program, and we come and we appraise the value on the whole package,
So
not
so they're
just
going
the
to do it
one
on
piece.
and they're going to do it on the future value of the property,
Exactly.
right?
Yes.
I've seen some lenders have that for renovation loans, but
Mm-hmm.
not for necessarily for like this product specific,
Yeah. ADUs have
so
always been
much.
excluded.
Yeah,
Didn't make sense to me. I was like, somebody make this make sense to me, or make
yeah,
me a product even
yeah.
better that we can go out and do this. Because I think that's been a huge roadblock to people creating these structures. And if we are going to create affordable rental options for those that want to turn these into rentals, they
Mhm.
have to be able to finance them because most people don't have an extra $150,000 just laying around to be like, oh, let me go ahead and put this thing in the backyard, right? It's not a thing. And so if we create financial solutions, then we create, that trickle down, and I think it's just kind of a win for everybody.
Mhm. I'm. Are there any government grants that are applicable right now to any of those?
There are some. There's actually a huge package that is supposed to get voted on in the hopefully soon.
Yeah,
They're a little tied up voting on some other things right now. Some
yeah,
temporary shutdowns and stuff.
yeah,
I'm like, how do we shut down the housing world so that we force a
yeah,
vote like yesterday?
yeah.
I would love to figure that part out. But yes, there's a lot of bills that are currently about to go through. There's a huge housing referendum package. And that will provide a lot, not necessarily grants, but a lot more easing of some of the restrictions that are in place for putting ADUs in.
Hmm.
And more so from the standpoint of if I have a lot that I own, right, and I maybe can't afford to put a true single family home on it, I
Hmm.
can put an ADU on it now. And
Hmm.
I can start generating some income off of that property and create a housing opportunity.
Hmm.
Um, and so that will be changing. So we're hopeful that those will go through. Um, there are some federal grants if you fall into specific,
Yeah, like income guidelines,
classifications.
and yeah.
Yep. There's some stuff for VA, Native American tribes, there's some specialty things that exist, but overwhelmingly for the general public, no.
Hmm.
Um, Different counties have started to introduce packages. Atlanta, in particular, is very, very gung ho about ADUs. They have
I
a
would think
massive,
so. I mean,
yeah,
they
they
have a
have a
massive
massive
shortage.
housing shortage
Yeah.
there. And unfortunately, people say that Charlotte's traffic is bad, but I go down to Atlanta at least
Yeah.
once a quarter. You have
Yeah.
not seen anything. I
Yeah.
mean,
You're
Atlanta,
not wrong.
LA,
Yeah.
they're both bad.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why, and I love Atlanta. So people in Atlanta, please don't hate me for saying this, but it was not on our list of places to look at when we were looking to move because
Yeah.
I had been there for work, and I'm like, it doesn't matter what time of day it is. This traffic is terrible. So you're just kind of confined to your little area, and that's it. And so I think
Yeah.
that's a big thing. Charlotte, you can move a little further out. It certainly adds to the commute, but it's not horrendous.
Hmm.
It's getting to a point where it will be soon, but it's not there yet. So it still gives us a lot of flexibility with pricing and getting construction further out. But Atlanta, that ship sailed. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I would think like every city county that is dealing with a massive shortage of housing would be all over something like that,
I
and
would hope
incentivizing
so.
it as much as possible. I would think lending side probably needs to kind of grow. I mean, you got to find investors for it.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest missing piece to it.
I
But
mean, you're in that, right? So
yeah,
it's
yeah,
just there's so many government restrictions on Fannie and Freddie's
yeah.
side.
Oh
You
yeah,
you just can't make it work. So unless you're a
yeah.
broker like you and you have
Hmm.
access to private investors,
Yes.
it's not a reality. And that's one of the things we're hoping will change through this new bill passage is just opening up those guidelines with Fannie and Freddie a little bit more to be more inclusive of this stuff
Hmm.
because this is a great option for people.
Yeah, I mean it can be so many different things as we covered. It can be your family coming in. It can be
Yeah.
an investment, or both. It's there's a lot of flexibility with something like that. I mean, yeah, in with the market that you said, it's been a seller's market for a while. And shortage of housing has been one of the main reasons. And it's just driven up prices, interest rates being higher, affordability is way down. So yeah, I mean that it provides an excellent solution for a lot of people. Hopefully, shifting populations too, right? Giving up that
Yes.
big home they don't need to no longer take care of.
Yes.
The legacy, the family coming in. I mean, I would love that. I don't know if my wife would
Right?
like that. uh, but,
She's like, we will
yeah.
take two, one for him and one for me. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But that's great. Well, I guess last question before we start wrapping up here. I mean, if you had in whether it's in this or in your real estate business, if you had a magic wand, you could just wave it and solve this one problem you guys are always dealing with on a constant basis right now. Like, what would you do?
Financial literacy. I would love to change financial literacy. Um, it has been heartbreaking to me to meet with so many people who think they are doing things the right way, right? They think they're making really smart decisions, and they're doing everything they can, but they're at such an uphill climb already, right? Because they missed out on this. So adding this into the schools, starting this from day one, if I could wave a magic wand, that would be my biggest thing. And having it taught by people who truly understand the full spectrum of
Hmm.
how the economy plays off of it and the markets and the markets, including the real estate markets. Like I went to a very good school and we learned about the stock market. No one ever talked to me about real estate. It wasn't even a
No.
thing. And we don't talk about that. And I think that's really interesting. And it's one of those things that as I work with first time home buyers in particular, there's many of them, they're the first person in their family to own a home. And
Hmm.
that's tremendous what that can do for the generations. And it's very interesting to me to see that perspective just because I grew up very differently. And, my family, we didn't talk about the stock markets in my house. We talked about the real estate markets.
Yeah.
And so I have a very different perspective on this. And I think we've kind of, I'm going to say like La La Landed, Hollywood esque owning a home. And we've made it into this thing where it's, you've reached this pinnacle of fairyland and you've achieved this great dream. And it's an incredible achievement. And I don't ever want to take away from that. But I think we also need to get real of what that means. And it's not just, okay, I've secured my loan and now I've moved in. It's like, what are my costs to even move in? Right? People forget you have to furnish a home. Right? I always
Yeah.
laugh and people are like, I want 5,000 square feet. I'm like, okay, let's talk about what are you doing with that 5,000
I
square
always have
feet?
to
Because
tell my
this is,
clients that are buying a home, they're like, all right, how much money do you have? Like $10,000. I'm like,
yes,
well, that's your down payment. So what else?
yeah.
Like, you got
So
more
you have
money or?
nothing. Yes. Are
Yeah.
you living on an air mattress? Like, because this is where we're at. Yeah. So just kind of, getting them to understand that we use the 1% rule on our team. So we always sit down with our clients. We say, all right, whatever the budget is that we're setting, we need to know that you can set aside and not touch in a housing fund 1% of the value of this house every year so that you can cover any surprises, any long term maintenance, right? Because uh, unlike the stock market where they're like, don't watch it, right? You just set it and forget it. Walk away. Don't keep
Hmm.
checking the ticker. With a house, you have to keep an eye on it and you have to keep investing into it. Otherwise, the value is not going to be there when you go to sell it and move on. And
Hmm.
so I think that's something that I would love to be able to educate people from early on in a much better way.
Hmm.
As a team, I feel like we do a really good job of it. Um, and I feel like, adding the ADUs into it is just another step, another piece of the puzzle, so to speak, of bringing these solutions to our clients. But I really, really wish that we could get in front of audiences much sooner and get them to understand the pros and the cons and what this looks like. And, figuring out ways to set people up, not just with down payment assistance, but also how about like here's a little savings account, right? We have an escrow account for taxes and insurance. Why can't we have something like that for house maintenance, right? Because it's like, I fully believe that neighborhoods don't go to crap because people don't care. I think it's just
Hmm.
because they learn to stop caring because financially they can't manage it.
Hmm. I mean that's a insightful idea. I never even thought of something like that.
Okay,
Maybe as part
go
of your
make that happen,
loan,
Carl.
yeah, as part of your loan, like you have like a certain amount that you have to
Right?
pay every month for maintenance to the home,
Yeah.
right? And then you could
Just like
basically
something
apply to
to,
your servicer, being like, "Hey, I'm doing
yes.
this. Oh, great, here's the money."
Yeah, my
Um,
water heater just broke,
yeah,
right? I don't have an extra $3,000 laying around. Guess what? Most people don't, right? There was
yeah,
that horrible stat that came out a year or so ago. It was like most people don't even have $1,000 in their savings account. And I was like, oh my
yeah,
gosh, right?
yeah,
And so it's like nobody plans for this stuff to happen, but it does. So, okay, Carl, you're in charge. You're going to make this happen. You're going
yeah,
to add this into that escrow account so that we can save for those things.
yeah. Well, that's great. Well, thank you, Allison. I mean, this is a really insightful conversation here. Any last things you'd like to add here before we wrap up?
I would just say, if anybody is getting started or they feel like they've gotten to a point in their career and they're hitting that wall and they just feel stuck, reach out. I do a lot of coaching and mentoring outside of my team. And, we are looking to expand Lodestone. So if you're interested, we'd love to hear from you.
All right, how do we get in touch?
You can find us on Instagram at Lodestone REI, or you can go to our website and we have a contact us form you can fill out, lodestonerealestate.com.
Perfect. Well,
Yeah,
thank you, Allison. That was great. Sharing both your businesses here.
I appreciate
And
it.
yeah, and hopefully, we all learned something. So thanks for joining us, and that's another episode here of the Team Playbook.